got so many papers in front of me.
They're not on. Ready?
Okay, we're gonna reconvene the meeting after our executive session, and the first order of business is public input. I don't see anybody here that's interested in speaking, so we're gonna move on to continued business. There is no student report tonight. Ms. Willis, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Continued business, we have an update on the MSBA Secondary School Building Committee meeting, which was held on June 28th. And for the record, our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, July 26th at 6:30 in this room. And I asked the superintendent if she has a report either on that meeting or anything that's transpired since then.
On Tuesday, June 28th, the committee discussed the importance of public relations, getting information out to the public on the progress of the project, especially as scopes are defined and the MSBA approves submissions. A parent joined us. Her name is Julie Copley, and she expressed interest in being a big part of a group to inform the community. And then Mr. Venezia will also contact community activists to invite them to participate in this group. The site school traffic was briefly discussed, and the committee asked Doran Whittier to make a presentation at the next SSBC meeting on this particular topic. Rob Jusola?
Sounds good.
All right. From Doran Whittier, reviewed the proposed layout of an integrated middle school, high school project, and that presentation was very similar to what he had done at the previous school committee meeting. And I also want to report to you that there is a special education report that is required to be completed by MSBA, and I'm happy to say that that report is done, and I would like to thank Director of Pupil Personnel Services Patty Bullard, High School Principal John Bernard, and Middle School Principal John Fauché for writing an outstanding report on this topic. And as Mr. Venezia said, the next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, July 26th.
Cliff, anything you want to add?
No.
Okay. And again, what we're going to try to do is we need an outside committee or an outside group that needs to help promote this. We can, obviously, the Secondary School Building Committee, the school committee can provide information, but we can't necessarily go out and campaign for the school. So we're going to see if there's an outside group that's willing to do that. No?
So when is the next, some sort of plans or ideas have been submitted by Doran Whittier to MSBA, correct?
That is correct.
What's the next we hear back from MSBA?
Well, we had a preliminary meeting scheduled for July 27th at 10 a.m. And I was informed today that that has been changed. And so our OPM, Chris Simler, is working on rescheduling that. But at this particular time, we do not have a date nor a time for that meeting.
So that's to provide feedback on what Doran Whittier has presented?
Well, two representatives from MSBA would like to walk the site and then sit down and have a conversation about any questions that they have regarding what has been submitted.
I perfectly understand what the state has done when they put the MSBA in place, but talk about slowing down a process. I mean, I know there's reasons for everything, but this is taking at least a year longer than it would have taken, probably more than a year longer than under the old regulations, and just
Well, I
don't
think
understand
a year's a bit of a stretch. I don't think it's taken a year longer. I will say this: it's bureaucracy, but it's good bureaucracy in the sense that we are so much further ahead of where we were, say, with the batch, as far as knowing the procedure we have to follow, having a head start. And I think we're going to make up some of this time. Correct me if I'm wrong, Cliff. Because of the construction people we have on board, the manager at risk, I think, is going to help us get a head start on the next phase of this project. So I think that my personal feeling is you don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. I mean, there's going to be a huge contribution from the state here if this passes, and we have to comply with their procedures. And we have a couple of professional people. Our project manager has a tremendous understanding of the procedure. He's done it on several other projects. They're working on projects right now, and I think it's a necessity. I'm not sure, Mel, that it's been a year for sure that we've
No,
lost.
I'm saying it's going to be a year or more by the time this project's done.
It's possible, but I think that I mean, we're still scheduled for a vote in January. You know, that's when we're looking to go forward and get the votes for both town meeting and from the public. And I think in the end, it's going to be worth it.
So I'm going to thank my friends from Newton every meeting when we discuss our new school project.
Well, and you can also you can also have the opinion that if the MSBA hadn't done this, maybe there wouldn't have been funding enough to go around for projects like ours, if they continue to spend like they were spending on some of these other projects. So I'm just grateful that we're on the list. I'm grateful that we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully that in January, when we take this to the public, that we're going to get a positive result. But it is tedious, but I think we're in the stage now where we're moving. We're moving.
In any project, you get a certain amount of review that has to go on by various groups. And what is being done is rational review, and it's aimed at getting something that we don't do a false start, we don't head off and do something that is short-sighted. I think the process is a rational one. And if it takes a little longer in the preliminary stages, I think we'll make up for it as we get further in, and not having those, those things flopping around out afterwards, second guessing.
No, I agree with that. I guess the experience we've had in North Reading, however, has been highly positive with our building projects. And having a whole new layer of bureaucracy imposed upon you when we have not shown in the past that we're one of those communities that's going to go out and build 3 football fields because we can, it's a big government annoyance to me to some extent.
I think it's somewhat of a safety net around us too. I mean, again, just even from day one, when basically they said, well, the size of the school is going to be for 740 students. And right there, instead of us, saying, well, maybe we should build a school for 850 students, it's 740, and I think that you economize because it's.
Well, they initially said 700, and
we got it to 740, and that's, yeah.
But
so
my point there is, we would have come in probably with 780. We would have come in with a higher number initially. I guess that's the point that I just see. I think I understand why the process is in place, but I think it slows down every step of the process. That's all.
And at the same time, we're gaining a certain amount of credibility with our constituents, in that this is being reviewed by an agency that's looking at school projects around the state, and saying that, yeah, this is the right kind of project to do, and they're holding us back from building the 780. They're watching the purse strings, and I think that's something that we'll be able to rely on as we go forward. That's going to provide a level of security for our constituents.
And I think that when we do come up with a cost, they're not going to, the community's not going to look at just us and say, oh, geez, you say that's what it's going to cost. We're going to say, well, that's what we say it's cost, but that's also what the MSBA says it costs, and they're paying 50% of this. So I think it gives you a little bit more credibility. Okay, anything further on the secondary school building? Okay. Next on the agenda is the NSBA resolution. I think Mel brought this up at the last meeting and asked to have it put on the agenda.
It's more of my favorite big government interference with local.
Have you become a libertarian?
I am about to, because every step of the way, especially with the federal government, they just seem to want to take more control over local activities, and it's just.
Do you want to speak on this first?
Yeah,
Mel?
I do.
Yeah, okay.
I have one I brought tonight. If we do pass this, a copy of this that has your name and Jerry's name on it, that it would be signed, and it would be sent to the Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan, and I have that information, so you could give that to Ann tomorrow if we pass this tonight. And it's still not too late. They're still sending these in to the Secretary of Education, and basically what this is it's asking for regulatory relief for America's schools. The Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which is currently known as No Child Left Behind, it's about 3 years overdue for reauthorization. So this thing's been sitting there. It really shouldn't even be enforced because it's not authorized to be enforced, but it's still enforced by the federal government. So what this is it's a petition asking for regulatory relief for our schools, and I'm going to read it because it's a pretty short and pretty quick read. But it's basically asking that a lot of the penalties in place right now in No Child Left Behind be waived or omitted until the ESEA is reauthorized again. There's fear that as many as 90% of our schools are going to be penalized next year when the reports come out from No Child Left Behind, because so many schools have basically reached about as far as they can go, and they can't meet the improvement goals anymore. So they're saying, for all those good schools that are about at the top, you now fail, and that's a problem. That's a problem. So let me read the resolution, and then the board can discuss and see if we take a vote on it. So it's called the Resolution Concerning Regulatory Relief for America's Schools. Whereas the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, currently known as No Child Left Behind, is more than 3 years overdue for reauthorization. Whereas the current law is widely recognized as flawed and in need of improvement. Whereas the current accountability requirements will result in more than 3/4 of America's public schools being labeled as failing in the coming school year. Whereas such a drastic misrepresentation of the accomplishments of America's public schools does more harm than good and undermines the hard work of millions of educators and students across the nation every day. Whereas America's public schools and the students they serve deserve relief from the onerous regulations that are widely acknowledged to be both unfair and overly burdensome. Whereas in facing the challenge of implementing these complex regulations, school districts across the nation struggle with the rigidity of regulation and are forced to spend resources, both financial and human, on compliance rather than on teaching and learning. Whereas it is increasingly unlikely that Congress will be able to complete a full reauthorization before the 2011-12 school year and alleviate pressure from both current law and its related regulations, we, the undersigned, support reauthorization of the outdated ESEA legislation. We urge, absent congressional reauthorization, immediate regulatory relief for the 2011-12 school year, and any efforts to rescind or modify current regulations and alleviate undue pressure on the nation's schools. We urge the Department of Education to exercise their regulatory authority to relieve school districts from the constraints of current statutes, keeping schools from being held hostage while Congress moves forward with complete reauthorization. We request that this relief be straight regulatory relief, not waivers. Schools deserve straight regulatory relief and not the additional requirements or conditions that often come with waivers. We specifically support suspension of additional sanctions under current AYP requirements effective for the 2011-12 school year. Schools currently facing sanctions would remain frozen. No new schools would be labeled as in need of improvement or subject to new or additional sanctions.
What's the source of the resolution?
It's the NSBA, which is the National School Board Association, and the American, is it the Superintendents?
American Association of School Administrators.
Yeah. And one other note, so what this is saying is we don't want waivers. We want you to say the regulations aren't in effect this year. Well, before I came, I saw an email from Glenn Kuchar from MASC, and there's some information coming out that Secretary Duncan may be offering some waivers, but of course they're tying them to other conditions. In other words, we'll waive this.
Just what they said in the resolution.
We'll waive this if you agree to that. For example, there'll be 3 kinds of waivers, but the district will have to accept all 3 of them. To waive the 2014 deadline for all students to be proficient in math and language arts, states would have to adopt college and career readiness standards and assessments. It's not clear yet what that would mean. And so they're saying if they do this, then we have to do that, which is why I think they want as much pressure with this resolution.
Where's MASC on this? Are they supporting this resolution?
MASC is supporting the resolution, yeah.
They are. Okay. Kathy, you want to add anything?
I support Mel's efforts in forwarding this to Washington. I think it's about time, and I have no problem with signing this and moving it forward.
Comments from the rest of the committee?
Great idea.
I knew you'd like it. Yeah.
While we're at it, maybe we could eliminate the whole Department of Education
Oh,
at the
God.
federal level.
I support that.
We've been here for half an hour. We've criticized the school building authority and the MASC
No, the federal
That's a
Department of
start.
Education.
That's a start.
Maybe we should adjourn before.
That's a start.
Okay, all right.
We'd be safer too.
I have really no problem supporting this. I mean, I don't like the way it's written, but overall, I mean, reducing regulatory burden on school districts is a very important
It's
topic.
the message.
Yeah.
That's the message that we're trying to send.
Right.
I may not like NSBA